Now, welcome to another Let's Talk Some Star Wars, where this time we'll be taking a look at and discussing the results of the poll that asked you what you thought of the fourth episode of The Acolyte, or if you're even watching it. As usual, then, I'll also be reading and responding to some of the comments left on the poll. And so let's right away get to the results, where we'll see that 2% of voters thought this episode was really good or excellent. 4% then thought it was pretty good, or at least above average. There was then another 12% who thought it was okay at best, or maybe a bit below average, which then left 18% to say it wasn't very good or it was flat out terrible, and a final 64% who either haven't watched it yet or are not planning on watching it at all. And what's right away interesting here is that when we compare it to last week's poll, it actually looks very, very similar to that one. Only that the number of people who thought this episode was bad or terrible, it went down. So that's a positive, right? Well, no, it's not, because with the number of people not watching it or haven't watched it yet for one reason or another, though I'm going to assume the majority here is not going to watch it at all, and I mean vast majority. But with that number going up and the bad or terrible option going down, I think we can very safely assume the reason why less people really didn't like this episode is because they simply didn't watch this episode, that they're done with the series, that they have checked out entirely. And what makes this, of course, even worse is this is not a random sampling of people. If you get this poll in your feed, you probably either follow my channel or you've clicked on it a time or two. You are probably a Star Wars fan, is basically what I'm saying. And so here we have a poll that shows that 2/3 of Star Wars fans, who again follow my channel in some respect, are not watching a Star Wars show. Nevertheless, I will once again do the math here and show, I'm just going to put it on your screen, I'll show what people who did watch the episode thought of it, or I'll factor out, again, the nearly 2/3 not watching it and get our rating from those who did watch it. And, well, they're not so great either. Half the people who watched it, according to the poll, thought it was a bad or terrible episode. And so let's now move on to some comments here, but not before once again just taking a moment to say thank you to everyone who votes, comments, or watches these or any of my videos, or to those of you who leave a hate or question for the lightning response videos. I appreciate all of it, and I very much appreciate also those who support the channel over on Patreon. Thank you so much for that. And now on to the comments, where we will once again start with the top rated comment from the poll, which comes to us from Derek Lopez, who simply said, "At this point, I don't blame the white Jedi Torben for drinking the poison. He knew the show was hot garbage." And, well, I think that comment just kind of speaks for itself, so I will move on to the next highest rated comment, which comes to us from Prussian Hill, who said, "The greatest mystery remains where the budget went. Acolyte's budget is nearly 50 million larger than House of the Dragon, yet House of the Dragon accomplished far more than the Acolyte on that smaller budget." Also, we had this similar comment from Hannikin Sidewalker, who said, "Star Wars is so far behind other big budget TV shows right now. Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, House of the Dragon, The Fallout Show, The Boys. All of them have hour-long episodes of higher quality than almost anything we've gotten from Star Wars in the past few years. When will people stop making excuses and realize that enough is enough?" And though I am by no means an expert when it comes to how much it costs to make a movie or show, or where and how budgets are used when making them, how much a certain CGI may cost to do, or how much it may cost to go on location to film a scene, but I can still use my eyes to see how shows of a similar budget, and in some cases a much lower budget, how they look and how they compare to The Acolyte, how they oftentimes look so much better, leaps and bounds better in some cases, and I just don't understand why Star Wars looks so generic. Why it looks nowhere near as good as other shows of a similar budget, or again a smaller one even. I do not get what is happening with all that money. And I mean, a lot of other comments brought up such things as Godzilla Minus One and how they made that whole movie, which looked fantastic, how they made it for less than the average cost of an Acolyte episode. Or how the Acolyte had a similar budget to Dune 2, which yes, again, is a movie, but that movie looked absolutely stunning, and by comparison, there is no comparison. The Acolyte falls short in every single way compared to that film, and again, compared to so many other shows, and I'd love to know why. And though certainly special effects or just the visuals in general are not everything when it comes to a good show or a good movie, even George Lucas has said that special effects are just a tool, a means of telling a story. People have a tendency to confuse them as an end to themselves. A special effect without a story is a pretty boring thing. But even though they're not everything and they are only a tool, they are sort of expected to be pretty good in general in Star Wars. And if you are going to spend this much money, you're going to spend nearly $200 million, well, shouldn't they look a bit better than they do, or a lot better? And I'm not saying the show looks absolutely terrible. It is not the worst thing I've ever seen by any stretch. But this latest episode, everything inside the forest, it just looked like they were on a small soundstage somewhere. You didn't really get that feeling that they were in a massive, untamed, and very dangerous jungle. You, again, felt like you were on a small soundstage with some plastic plants here and there. And all this goes along with a comment from Emperor Cubone, who said, "I could never tell why this show looked off to me from the trailers and everything I saw promoting it, but it just hit me. The Acolyte is a Star Wars show set in the world of Disney's Galactic Starcruiser, and now it all makes sense. The style of the sets and costumes and odd face paints just seem to display the same sort of energy as the failed Disney experience, in that they tried to capture some Star Wars iconography without understanding the thematic importance of why things look the way they did. The lived-in feel on screen in the original trilogy has now been traded out for a commercial for a theme park that's just a little too sparse, and people can tell even if they can't put their finger on why." And I think you're pretty much right on target here. And I would say that the root of this problem is that they try too hard to make things look like Star Wars. Or try too hard to make something look and feel like Star Wars. Which also includes how they write the dialogue. They try to write Star Wars dialogue. They try to write Star Wars characters. Which makes it feel very fan fiction-y, to be blunt about it. And one of the reasons why I think Andor worked so well is Tony Gilroy and company, they didn't try to write Star Wars dialogue. They just wrote dialogue for people. He just created characters, not Star Wars characters. And that is, as I've talked about or argued many times before, but that's one of the many reasons why the first Star Wars movie was such a success. It had real characters in it, not strange sci-fi characters or characters that felt very alien and strange to us with lives and problems that we couldn't hope to relate to. Instead, they felt like you and me. The main character even grew up on a farm, for crying out loud. And so we saw them as just like us, that they might even have similar day-to-day problems like we do, or similar hopes and dreams like we do. Like they lived lives in many respects just like the ones we do here on Earth. They just happened to be in another galaxy. Simply put, they were relatable because no attempt was made to make them feel like a certain type of character. And I feel like way too often the writers or creators of these shows, they approach it like they're trying to make something Star Wars, like there's some type of formula that must be followed, and that if you do, it'll magically be Star Wars. It'll be this certain thing because we included all the hallmarks of it, as if it's just that simple. And they never realize that they're not actually making Star Wars, they're making something set in the Star Wars galaxy. They're telling a story in that setting and not trying to be the setting itself, if that even makes sense. And don't get me wrong here, I'm not saying you can't set out with the intent to make something very overtly Star Wars and succeed. I'm saying there's a very fine line here. There's a very fine line between trying to really make something Star Wars to the point where you're kind of getting lost in the weeds, where you're more focused on how it feels and how certain things look and how certain characters act or talk, and between just making something in the galaxy that feels authentic to the galaxy as it exists already. I don't know that I'm articulating it as well as I hope I am, but hopefully you do understand what I'm trying to say here. But anyway, let's now move on to this comment from only one Star Wars fan who said, "The most insulting thing to me was that it was only 28 minutes long. Either commit to the hour TV slot bit or drop the whole show on day one." There was also this comment that asked the question, "Hey Thor, do you think this show would have done better if they just released all episodes? It feels like a weekly release schedule forces us to be more critical of each episode, and frankly these episodes feel like they can't stand up that well on their own." And I do think it would help. Not that it would suddenly make the show amazing if you could just sit down and watch it all in one go, assuming you would want to do that. But I do think a series that drops all at once has the advantage of not necessarily having to follow episode structures to the T. Because when you have the option to watch the next episode whenever you want, you don't necessarily dwell so much on the previous one. And when you have the option and do watch something, say, kind of back to back to back, you're not necessarily even trying to look at it as episodes, you're just kind of taking it as the whole. And so when you get something like an entire flashback episode or a short episode like this that really doesn't cover much, you're again not really dwelling on it, you're just going to move on and watch the next episode, assuming you're enjoying it and want to watch the next episode. And so yes, long story short, I do think it would help to drop everything all at once. Not that I'm saying that's how I think they should do it. I get why Disney Plus releases things week to week because they're trying to keep you subscribed for as long as they can, and they don't have a ton of offerings like a Netflix where they're always dropping new shows and you're going to watch a ton of different things. But anyway, it helps, yes, but I don't think that would solve the problem of the show. I think people would still find the same issues, more or less, but maybe one of the issues wouldn't be that the episodes are too short or whatever it might be. Alright, and now on to just a few final comments before wrapping it up. Starting with this one from Roth Shavili, who said, "It was way too short. Master Squid Game's acting was once again commendable, though." There was also this one from Snips, who said, "I don't even know where to start. I liked the dynamics of the Jedi again. Stated that the last few posts. But the writing, oh my god, Mundi really rubbed me the wrong way the longer I thought about it. It actually justifies Count Dooku turning to the Sith by making it Jedi arrogance that leads to Qui-Gon's death as shown in Tales of the Jedi, which indirectly leads to Yaddle's death, the Clone Wars, and Order 66. We've gone from the Jedi being complacent and outmatched to actually being stupid. Mundi is also the guy who suggests the treason against Palps in Revenge of the Sith, so do with that what we will, I guess. I don't know, I'm just watching at this point to see where it goes. Then I'll promptly erase it from my canon in my mind. It works for Headland and Filoni." Then there's this one from Drunk Jedi Knight, who said, "Apparently the Jedi need space gophers to track other Jedi when they're not even cut off from the Force." Then we move on to this one from Ganzi, who said, "I'm kind of in the middle. It was about average with some interesting moments. I'm curious to find out who the dark side user is presented to us. I would like them to only be an apprentice at most. Hopefully an Acolyte, because I like to pretend they're going to have Plagueis or Tenebris somehow being a puppet master behind it all. However, I'm with you about Ki-Adi. Of all the characters they could have used, why did it have to be him? Love your channel for a long time. Keep doing the will of the Force." And finally, we have this comment here from Dark Vortex, who said, "Say what you will about the show, but they nailed the build-up to the Master. May finds Kilnaka dead as night falls, Soul senses something, and they see something float to the ground. The Master slowly approaches them, and without saying a word, Osha is scared as the Master stands inches from Osha. He ignites the saber, briefly tricking the audience that he killed her, then throws Osha with the Force by barely moving his hand. The Jedi charge and pushes all the Jedi back. Perfect introduction. The Sith, or whatever he is, was genuinely creepy and a great cliffhanger." Well, that is going to be all I got for you this time. Now it is your turn to take to the comments below and tell me what you think about what I or anyone else had to say about the show in this video, or tell me what you think about the show or why you're not watching it. Whatever the case may be, you know what to do. Leave a comment below. Let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.